Good morning. We're back in the Gemara on page Mem Dalad Amud Beis 42b. I was just thinking about this yesterday.
How can we dedicate
Oh yes, a reminder. Sorry, this morning. Felt to dedicate to share to two Michaels that used to be at our class: Mordechai Dov ben Pesach Halevi and Michal Meir ben. His mother's name was Miriam. His father's name was Chaim. I believe Chaim. Michal Meir ben Chaim. I think so. Anyway,
memory?
yeah. Founding members of this year, early participants and eager participants.
Pioneers of this class.
Eager participants and what's the word? Enthusiastic participants. Both with questions and thoughts. Okay.
Good mentors, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I was thinking about this the other day, which is so combining what we learned in the Maimer over the last few days about the Egla Rufa being a way in which we and way in which we acknowledge the existence of a negative force, give it its due, and keep it in its corner, casting away. Now, combining that with our thinking here in the Gemara, that all the mitzvahs listed here in the Gemara that one is required to say in Hebrew, and that's how this all comes up, right? Because the Sotah has a oath that the Kohen has to administer, and he has to administer it in the original language of the Torah. And from there, the Mishnah gets on to listing all the other mitzvahs that have a verbalization element, and which ones are required to be done in the original Hebrew and which ones can be done in any language, right? And Egla Rufa, as we're learning, is Lashon HaKodesh. That's what's launched this entire discussion about the law of Egla Rufa. And there's two speeches we discussed. One is the elders, the judges of that local city, who wash their hands and say, we are not at fault for what happened here. And then there's the Kohen who says, Kapel Amcha Yisrael, let God atone for his people, which, as we explained in that Maimer, is not an atonement in the classic sense, considering that the people didn't do anything. It's an atonement in the sense that it removes the possibility that this negative act bring upon the Jewish people as a whole, because of their interconnectedness, bring a negative decree. Now, we made the case that when the Gemara and when the Halacha requires that it should be done in the original Hebrew, that means it's a direct message from Hashem that's not to be altered, as opposed to those mitzvahs which can be done in any language, which is the Torah's way of saying that what's primary here is your understanding and your feeling and your perception. And the classic model for that would be prayer, right? The two classic models would be prayer, which is to be done really in any language, could be done in any language because it's about where you're feeling and you're expressing. So it should be in your language. You should understand what you're saying. That's the essence of prayer. And conversely, the priestly blessing, the Birchas Kohanim, which is not our communication to God, it's the reverse. God's communication to us. And the Kohen is just the vehicle. And thus he speaks in the original language because he has to maintain God's words. Because it's not his words, it's just God's words that he's verbalizing in this world. So if that's the case, then that would mean that this process of recognizing the negative force and saying you belong there, and it's to be done in the original Hebrew, would mean then, this is what I'm thinking, and this is my suggestion again, that there's some element here of not just us recognizing that which is negative and pushing it into a corner, but God himself doing that. It's almost as if through the Egla Rufa, God is telling us, I know I created negative, and I know it puts you in a tight spot. This is where it belongs, push it there. Because God himself is kind of sharing the burden, the responsibility of the existence of negative. All right, this is like, I've shared this before, certainly, the Hashem's decision to bring about the flood is the same logic that Hashem at the end decides to never bring on a flood again. He starts off, look at the verses, it's right there. Before the flood, God says, man is bad from the beginning. So I regret doing this whole thing. Let's start over. And then after, God says, man is born bad. What do you want from him? Why should I bring a flood upon him? The same logic. The first God says they're bad, forget it. And then God says, they're bad. What do you want from them? They're born this way. I'm going to destroy them every time they misbehave. They're born bad. What do I want from them? It's the same logic the Gemara, the Torah does. And it's similar, I believe, to the Gemara's famous statement that God regrets three things, and amongst them, God regrets the Yetzer Hara. God regrets the evil inclination. So if you regret it, snap your finger and be gone with it. Get it over with. Which means, therefore, while simultaneously God keeps it in existence, he also simultaneously regrets it. As if to say God takes responsibility for the fact that negative exists. He says, look, because of my purpose, and the purpose is that we overcome negative must exist. So at the end of the day, I bear some of the responsibility. Right? And thus, even as we acknowledge the presence of negative and say, you belong in the corner, cast you away, it's done in the original language of Hebrew, conveying this notion that Hashem himself partners with us in taking responsibility for that negative. Which when we learned the Gemara first, we compared this to the famous Rashi from the Medrash about the sin offering of Rosh Chodesh, where Hashem says, this is Rashi brings us in the Chumash. We looked it up, remember? Rashi quotes the Medrash, which says that God says, bring a sin offering to atone for me that I made the moon small, that I diminished the moon. And the diminishing of the moon is the original symbol of introducing darkness to the world, introducing negativity. And so Hashem himself bears at the end some of the responsibility, if not all, for the fact that negative exists in this world. Certainly partners with us as we acknowledge the negative that exists and cast it away. And perhaps that's the reason why it's done specifically in the Hebrew to convey this message. It's not just us acknowledging negative and casting it out, but Hashem himself partners with us in that. So there's a very comforting element to that.
So when the elders say we're not responsible, are they in the original language? It's almost implying that it's Hashem's.
It's almost as if saying, look, we know there's negative in this world and we have to cast it away. But Hashem, you made it here, Hashem. That's why it's here. It's because you brought this here. That's why it exists. It's not, God forbid, a license to do as we wish, but it is comforting when we're faced with the thoughts of beating ourselves up over our past negative, which in and of itself is a double negative. Because if I beat myself up over my past negative, now I just drag myself down anymore and I'm a loser anyway, I might as well give up. Right? So I'm saying, look, things negative happen. This is how Hashem made the world. I have to beat myself up over this. Hashem partners with me in casting it away and moving on and helping me move on. And that's perhaps the message of the fact that it's delivered in the original Hebrew. Okay, so just some thoughts I was thinking of yesterday. Sorry? Yeah. Sorry?
So that's insightful.
Yeah. Okay. It's something you can think about when you say the Shema at night. We say in Hashkivenu paragraph that we say Lahasa Satan Mafanim Acharenu. We ask God to remove the Satan away from us, from in front of us, from in back of us. I for sure share this thought with you, We ask Hashem to remove the Satan away from before us and from the back of us. So before us, I understand you don't want the Satan in front of you to entice you to do negative. But why are we asking for the Satan behind us to get rid of that? Don't we want the Satan behind us?
Seems to be the theme of this.
That's right. So one of the thinking is that the Satan behind us is yesterday's sin pulling me down today. The Satan that trapped me yesterday pulled me down again because, hey, you're a loser anyway.
Right. Give up.
Give up, ready. So say even yesterday's Satan cast away, even from behind us, right? Even the sins that are in back of us already. It exists. It's no good. Hashem made it that way. He made us with negative from birth, as the Torah says it. And Hashem partners with us in this Egla Rufa process of just pushing it away. Okay, let's get to the Gemara itself. We are 3 lines in to the Gemara. So there's the Mishnah there, and then you see there's a big Gimel Mem, which indicates the Gemara below, sorry, on the bottom, because we're in a new chapter, right? Yeah, that's the last Mishnah of the previous chapter. So if you count 3 lines down under the big, bold Gemara, the last word on the line is Rabbi. That's where we are. So the Gemara the Mishnah discussed 2 different opinions as to how many judges must come from Jerusalem to measure what's the nearest city to this unresolved murder, to this corpse. Right? The process is, as we learned, first elders from Jerusalem, from the high court, come to the corpse, they measure to the nearest city, and then they invite the elders of that city, that nearest city, to come and make the declaration that our hands are not the cause of this death. And then the Kohen pronounces the atonement, and there's the decapitation and so on. So the Gemara, the Mishnah mentioned that there were 2 views as to how many judges must come from Jerusalem. Rabbi Yehuda said 5, and the Tana Kama, the unnamed opening sage, Tana, known as the Tana Kama, means the first sage. It's often the case in the Mishnah where the opening statement is nameless, meaning no name is given as to who's speaking, and then the Mishnah will introduce a second opinion. So that's what's happening here. The Mishnah begins with someone speaking, doesn't say who, and colloquially referred to as a Tana Kama, the original sage, and then Rabbi Yehuda speaks. So the original sage, the Tana Kama, says 3 judges, and Rabbi Yehuda says 5. And the Gemara is now going to cite to a Mishnaic era text, Tosefta, or Brisa, which elaborates on the Mishnah and gives us more background as to how the various different opinions got to their conclusion in their analyzation of the verse, which is often the case. Yeah.
It says here the Tet and a Resh, the quotes in the middle.
Yeah.
That's Tana Ramana.
That's correct.
Is that like Tana Kama? Is that the same?
Yeah, Tana Kama means original sage. Tana Rabbana means our sage is taught, which means the Gemara is introducing a Brisa.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Right. So we in the Babylonian Talmudic era, Gemara era, are saying that our sages of the previous generation of the Mishnah taught the following, which means what's about to be read is a quote from an earlier text. There's different tricks you can use to know when the quote begins and ends, because there's no quotation marks in the Gemara. Maybe there's 9 thoughts one has it. But if the Gemara begins with Tana Rabbanon, Tetanan, which are all different ways of saying it was taught to us, that means the Gemara is about to quote a text from the Mishnaic era,
Okay.
whether a Brisa, whether a Mishnah, whether a Tosefta.
Okay.
And the way you know when the quote ends is as soon as the Gemara switches to Aramaic. Now you know the quote's over, and it's the Gemara's analysis. Tana Rabbanon itself actually is in Aramaic. It's not in Hebrew. Right? Hebrew would say Shanu, or something like that. Okay, so first the Gemara quotes the relevant section of the Mishnah, which is Rabbi Yehuda says, Chamisha, you need to have 5 judges come from Jerusalem, etc., to measure the distance to this unresolved murder. Tan Rabbanon, our sages taught us. So now we're quoting Mishnaic H text the Brisa, which reads, V'yatzu zekenecha v'shoiftecha. The verse says, your elders and judges shall go out. This is the verse describing Negla Rufa. We learned these verses way at the beginning. Your elders and your judges shall go out and measure. Your elders and your judges are both stated in the plural. And thus comments the Brisa, Zekenecha, your elders in the plural, Shnayim. That tells us we have to have a minimum of 2. V'shoiftecha, and your judges, again, judges in the plural, Shnayim, 2 as well. V'ein bezdin shakel. You can never have a bezdin of equal number, because you have to have a majority. You always have to have the possibility, or not just the possibility. You have to have a bezdin that is inevitably split by majority and minority. And therefore you can't have an even number. So Torah says twice, plural, giving us 4. We add to them 1 more. We have now 5. Divided Rabbi Yehuda. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. So now this Brisa gives us the background to Rabbi Yehuda's view in the Mishnah. The Mishnah told us Rabbi Yehuda says 5.
Mm-hmm.
The Mishnah only quoted the verse. Actually, the Mishnah actually said this as well. It wasn't so elaborate, but the Mishnah said it. Okay. Now, the Mishnah again doesn't tell us who the opening sage is. We refer to him as a Tanakama, but the Braisa God does give us a name, namely Rabbi Shimon. And Rabbi Shimon, whenever it's unqualified, is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So Rabbi Shimon says, Zekeinecha, your elders, Shnayim is 2. Zekeinecha in the plural is 2. Vein Bezdin Shakel, and you cannot have an even Bezdin, so you cannot have 2. We add 1 more to them, and Harekan Shloisha, you have now 3. Okay? So Rabbi Yehuda reads Zekeinecha as plural, your elders as plural 2, Sheftecha, your judges as plural, another 2, and then you have to have it odd number, so he adds a 5th. Rabbi Shimon only reads 1 of them. He only reads your elders. And now the question becomes, of course, well, what does he do with the words your judges? Is that not there in the verse in Rabbi Shimon's reading? Yeah. But now we know the Gemara is speaking. How do I know that? Because it goes to Aramaic. Rabbi Shimon Namiha, those words Namiha is Aramaic, which means now the Gemara's analysis. Rabbi Shimon who told us 3, and all he did was cite to 1 word in the verse, Zekenecha, your elders, Nami as well, ha. Is it not Ksiv that reads, Usheftecha on your judges? How does he explain that? So says the Gemara, Hahu, that word Sheftecha, your judges, Mi boyale. Rabbi Shimon requires that to teach us Lemiyuchadin Shebei Sheftecha, for the most unique and prize of your judges. There are various different levels of judges. Even in Jerusalem, you have the courts, you have the minor Sanhedrin, you have more than there's a few layers of Sanhedrin as you get closer and closer.
13. Yeah, 13.
Not that I know of. It's 23, right?
23, yeah, 23. Not 13.
Right? And as you go closer and closer to the temple itself, the courts get higher and higher. So you might have thought that the verse is telling you to send elders from Jerusalem, any elders. And thus the verse adds an extra word to tell you, I mean those unique ones. So the word Sheftecha then, your judges, is not there to teach you how many judges should go. That you already know from the word Zekenecha, your elders.
The qualifier for
the word Sheftecha is a qualifier for what kind of judges, not for the amount. So Rabbi Yehuda understands each word to tell you the amount. Your elders 2, Sheftecha, your judges 2, and thus can have even 5. Rabbi Shimon says, Zekenecha gives you the number, your elders number 2, and Sheftecha tells you what kind of 2, the most unique of the judges, that is, from the high court, from the Sanhedrin Gedolah, from the major Sanhedrin of 72 judges that sat in the temple structure itself, in a room that was built half inside, half outside, right? Yeah, we clear?
Yeah.
Okay, so now the question becomes, in turn, Rabbi Yehuda, which used both of these words to teach us the number, from where do we derive, in his view, that these 5 judges, in his view, need to be from the high court. Maybe they can come from the lower court. Because he took both of those words and used them for the number. Right? With this principle, this great principle of analyzing Torah text, that every word must be precisely used for a unique item. And once it's been used to teach us something, it cannot teach us something else, because it's no longer available for you to extract any extra law, because it's been already used to extract. Right? So it's all derived from the additional. Torah could have gotten away with saying less. It said more. It's teaching you something. But once it teaches you something, you cannot then take it and say it teaches you something else, unless it's implied in the definition itself somehow. But just by the very fact that the Torah adds a word, cannot teach you more than one thing at a time. unless there's some other way Torah could have said it.
We have to see how Rabbi Shimon's opinion is consistent with Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, right? In terms of,
well, we know that they have to be from the high court. The question is how they derive it, how they come to the conclusion. Rabbi Shimon comes to that conclusion because he has two words: your elders and your judges. He uses your elders to give us the number, and uses your judges to give us what type of judges, the high court. But Rabbi Yehuda uses both your elders and your judges to tell us how many judges should come. So there's no words left available for him to teach us that these judges have to come from the high court. Right. And he must conclude that because we don't have no record of him disagreeing with that law. So we must conclude that he's also of the view that they come from the high court. The question is only how he got there from the verses. We're reverse engineering.
Yeah.
Right? Rabbi Yehuda lived a couple hundred years before us because we're in the Gemara's era. So he must have analyzed the verse in his day. We just have to think about how he got there.
Okay.
Yeah. So it says the Gemara of Rabbi Yehuda, miziknei zikenecha, nafka. He learns it out from the fact that the Torah says, your elders. It could have said, elders of the city should come out. Not your elders. So there is an extra word.
Your meaning who?
The Jewish peoples. So from the very fact that it says your elders should tell you the highest elders you possibly have. So in English, it's an extra word, your. But in Hebrew, it's just an extra suffix, the cha. So which means now, the Torah could have got away with not saying two things. It could have just said your elders. Sorry, it could have just said your elder. Rephrase it, sorry. It could have just said, the elders of the city should come out. It chose to say your elders.
I mean your highest.
Your highest. And then it added your judges, giving us another two judges. So Rabbi Yehuda's view is 5.
Because it repeats the chaf twice?
Because it repeats elders and judges. Elders plural, judges plural. 2, giving us an even number of 4. We have to add to make it odd. So we have 5.
And those words, they're different words for judges and elders?
Zikenecha and sheftecha. That's right. So, but it could have said the elders of the city, or elders of the city, without saying your. They added your.
Highest level.
That's right. And thus the extra added your tells us it's the highest level. So now we're left with Rabbi Shimon uses an entire word to tell us the number, your elders, 2 judges, and the entire word and your judges. Sorry. Rabbi Shimon, who says 3 judges come from the high court of Jerusalem, he uses the 2 words as follows. Your elders teaches you 2 judges. Your judges teaches you that they should be the highest judges.
I thought the word your was the...
That's Rabbi Yehuda's view.
Oh, okay.
So Rabbi Shimon's view only has... There's only...
The your and Shimon's view then.
So that's the question.
Okay.
What does Rabbi Shimon do with the your? There's the big...
It goes back and forth.
Exactly right. So we come to a point where here's where they dispute. That's what we have to do every time.
Yeah.
Where did they dispute at the end? Because they have to explain each other. They have to explain each other's verses, right? Because at this point, Rabbi Yehuda only has 2 derivations from the word your judges to give us, your elders to give us 2, and then your judges to give us the high court. But Rabbi Yehuda has 3 derivations. The elders, your judges. And the 3 derivations give us 2 plus 2, giving us 5, and then that they come from the high court. Yeah. Now to your question, you're getting it right. For Rabbi Shimon, what does he do with the extra your judges, your elders?
He's already qualified for high judges.
That's right.
For the word.
That's right. So explain to Rabbi Shimon like this. Ikasev Rachmana Ziknei, and the Torah said, the elders of the city. Hava min, I would have concluded, Afilu Ziknei Hashuk, even elders from the market. Just literally get old people. Doesn't mean they're anything qualified for anything other than just being old people. Now, so therefore, Kasev Rachmana, therefore the Torah writes, Zikei Necha, your elders, meaning judges. But the Kasev Rachmana Zikei Necha, and the Torah only said your elders, Haba Mina, I would have concluded, Afilus and Hediktana, even from the lower court. So Kasev Rachmana V'Sheftecha says the Torah, your judges, the Milchad Nishvah, for the highest court. In other words, Rabbi Shimon is saying The reason why I have 3 derivations is because 2 of them are necessary to tell us the high court, not 1. Rabbi Yehuda said that the words your elders is enough to tell me that they have to be the highest court. Because 1 derivation is enough to tell me that there's got to be the high court. But actually, you're skipping a step. Because there's literal old people, there's the low court, then there's the high court. So had it only been 1 derivation, your elders, I only would have went 1 step up. Not the elders from the market, but elders from the high court, from the minor court. So I have to have an extra derivation to tell me high court. So we both have 3 derivations. Sorry?
Rabbi Yehuda doesn't have to do that as well?
Okay, we're going to get back to that in a second.
Oh, okay.
Right, we have to go back and forth. Okay. Right? So at this point, what do we have? Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon both have 3 derivations. Rabbi Yehuda has 3 derivations to say 2 judges, another 2 judges, and then high court. That's Rabbi Yehuda's conclusion. And thus you have 5 judges. Because 2 judges, high court. Rabbi Shimon also has 3 derivations. 1 to tell us not 2 judges, number 1. Number 2 to tell us not elders in the market and not elders in the low court. Leaving us with the high court.
Oh, those are the 2 yours.
Exactly.
That makes sense. They each have 3.
They each have 3 now.
Tied up.
That's right. That's right. The question that becomes in the reverse. Rabbi Yehuda, doesn't he not need 2 derivations to get to the high court?
Right. To
exclude elders from the market and to exclude elders from the low court? With me, I think it's a little bit with me somewhat. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So it says the Gemara, Gomar zikne mezikne eda. He derives that the word elders cannot mean elders in the market to begin with. Why is that? Because elsewhere the Torah says, Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, please gather for me 70 elders and make them your court. So the word elders already means court.
That's a problem for Rabbi Shimon.
Big problem for Rabbi Shimon. Right? And Malahala miyuchad and shbeida, just as there, when the Torah says elders in reference to Moshe Rabbeinu collecting judges, they are miyuchad and shbeida. They are the uniquest and highest people of the amongst people, not just old in age. Afkan, so to hear miyuchad and shbeida, we know that they mean the highest and the most unique of the people. The truth is we're in the middle of a little process, but I'm going to stop over here because the Gemara is going to undo what it just did and give us a new direction to begin with. So I'll leave that for tomorrow. But at this point, we have, this is the Gemara's thinking at the moment. Rabbi Shimon concludes you need 3 judges come from Jerusalem. There are 3 derivations in the verse. Elders, judges, and the yor. So elders in the plural tells us 2 judges. Judges tell us not guys from the market. And yor tells us the high court. Rabbi Yehuda says people from the market, they're not on the table to begin with, because they don't count as elders as per the verse elsewhere where Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, collect the elders. So what are our 3 derivations? Elders, 2. Judges, another 2, giving us 4. That's 5, really. And then the fact that it says yor means the high court. That's it.
Elders, judges, yor.
That's right. They all have elder, judges, yor. The question is, what do these 3 things do?
No, the other one has 2 yours, right?
They both have 2. The verse does say twice yor, okay, but it's only 1 derivation. For whatever reason, I'm not sure why actually. It's the truth. But the Gemara only uses the yor, even though it says it twice. Your elders, your judges, but the Gemara only uses it at 1 derivation. Okay. And I'm assuming because once you say yor at one of them, you have to say yor at the other. So it's only really 1 derivation. So it's 3 derivations: elders, judges, and then the yor of both. Say. Yeah. Or maybe because
Rabbi Shimon has the issue of what do you do with the yor for his, or
no, he has 3,
because he said he has to distinguish between elders and higher court.
Rabbi Yehuda says people of the Rabbi Shimon has this thing. That's right.
Because he uses two derivations
to get to the high court.
To get to the high court, whereas Rabbi only uses
That's what Rabbi Shimon is.
That's the issue now. The ball's now back in.
Which is why Rabbi Shimon only has 2 judges, not 3, not 5. He only has 3 judges, not 5.
But it still has to determine why he assumes the highest court, right?
Okay, that's good. Meaning what I think what you're saying is, how does Rabbi Shimon handle the fact that the Torah says elsewhere elders already excludes people from the market?
2 yours in his case.
No, no one uses 2 yours.
No, okay.
Everybody, let's just like this.
But he has to derive that it's not the first level of
from these verses themselves. That's correct. Not from elsewhere. That's right.
To get to the highest court.
That's correct.
Whereas Rabbi Yehuda only uses the
1
because of what Moshe Rabbeinu said.
That's right. Which is why Rabbi Yehuda has an extra derivation here to give us 2 more judges, making it 5. And Rabbi Shimon says only 3 judges. That's right, because Rabbi Yehuda already learned to exclude market people from elsewhere. Therefore, he has an extra derivation here from which he derives. You have to have an extra 2 judges, giving us total 5. And thus, there's a dispute: 3 judges or 5 judges.
So it goes back to the number.
That's correct. That's how they got all down to this. That's right.
Status of judge.
That's right. That's right.
Let's see how that fits.
So again, 3 derivations. Again, we started with a text that only told us that there's a dispute. Rabbi Shimon says 3, Rabbi Yehuda says 5.
Yeah.
That's all we had. They both agreed as to that they come from the highest court. Okay. The question is how they derived to there. So we know that.
Forget that's
right. So
how do you derive 3 versus 5?
Exactly. So they both have 3 derivations: elders, judges, your.
Okay.
Okay. So Rabbi Shimon says elders gives us 2 judges. Your elders takes away people from the market, and your judges brings us to the high court. Rabbi Yehuda says people from the market are not qualified anyway because the Torah excludes them elsewhere. Now we have 3 derivations here: elders 2 judges, judges another 2 judges, giving us 5, and then your judges giving us the high court. There we are.
Yeah.
Okay, so just another thought. The reason why maybe, even though the Torah says twice your elders, your judges, maybe the reason why the Gemara only has 1 derivation for your is because when it comes to the word judges, if you were to exchange your judges for the judges, you'd end up with the same amount of letters, shoftim or shoftecha. Whereas when it comes to elders versus your elders, you're actually adding a chaf, because it's ziknei or ziknecha. Maybe that's just only 1 derivation for the your, because the other your doesn't save you anything. You're anyways using the same amount of words, letters. Unless the Gemara is thinking your goes for both. If you have to say your on one, you're saying you on the other. But I think this other way is better, because in this way, shoftim or shoftecha is the same amount of letters. Whereas ziknei, ziknecha is an extra word, letter. So the your in elders actually adds a letter, whereas the your in judges does not. And thus only 1 your is derived as something to be derived from. Because again, it comes down to, could the Torah have gotten away with less? Perhaps. Okay, so tomorrow we're going to see why the Gemara undoes this little, or at least part of what we just did, and gives us a new direction. Sure. Wonderful day, Eden.
Thank you.